Alright, in this video we're going to learn a couple of new hotkeys, and we're also going to get an early look at a couple of modifiers. But that'll be fun, right? And it'll help us make our modeling go quite a bit faster. So we have our file that we left off with, and we want to create some more geometry for our bridge to make it look a little bit more realistic. So, how are we going to do that without it getting really tedious? Well, let me show you. First thing I'm going to do is deselect my bridge here. And then I'm going to create a new mesh. I'm going to make a cube. And I'm going to hit S, scale that down. I want it to be roughly this a little bit bigger than the size of a unit. About the size of a unit. And I will go to 3. I'm going to hit Z to go to wireframe so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to hit scale and Z. I'm going to squish that down a bit. And then scale and Y. Now in the Y I want it to be a little bit wider than 1 unit. And it's arbitrary. You can make it just it'll have a little bit of a lip or a lot of lip, whatever you want to do. But as you can see, I am trying to keep it right down here at world 0. And that's because when we go to move it, you'll see why that's going to be handy for us. There is a way to do it no matter what. This is going to make life easier. So now we have our cube created. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to switch to edit mode, and I just want to give this a little more depth. So I'm going to hit Control B, and I'm just going to put a bit of a bevel on that. That should do nicely. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm going to make sure I rename my cube. Try not to be a bad boy. I'm going to call it Capstone. That should do nicely. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to select my bridge. Tab into edit mode. You can see we've still got our extrusion selected. I'm going to switch to edge mode by hitting Control Tab. And then I'm going to select this edge on the end and then Control select the other end, so that I get this entire selection. Now here's where we get into some new stuff. Right now we have this edge selected all the way along, but I need this edge to be a separate object before I turn it into a curve. So I'm going to hit P as in Peter, or really in this case as in separate, and bring up our separation menu. And I'm going to separate by selection, what I have selected. And that's awesome. Then I'm also, we can't see it, but we know it's right there where the line of our geometry is. Now I'm going to hit Alt-C. Well, I'm going to hit Alt-C right after I have it selected. And you can see it popped us back into object mode when we select it up there, and that's fine. So now we know that this is a curve. We can really tell when we tab back to edit mode, and we can see these little arrows coming off of our geometry, which tells us that this can now be used as a path. I'm also going to rename this because we will end up having more than one path. So I'm going to call this Capstone curve, so we can keep track of that. Alright, now let's tab back into object mode, and let's deselect our curve, and I'm going to select our capstone. Our capstone needs a couple modifiers. So I'm going to come over to our modifier menu. Remember, if it's looking like this to you, it looks like a wrench. I'm going to pull this down, and the first thing that we're going to generate is an array. You can see it gives us a count of 2 to start out with. And if we really zoom in, we can see our 2, but it's almost like one piece of geometry. That's because our relative offset of 1 means that it's starting, the new one's starting right where the other one left off. So let's put in 1.05. Get a little bit of separation going on there. Maybe even a little less than that. Yeah, I like 104. And then we can just use our count to up how many we have. But we'll deal with that in a second. Alright, we have this little down arrow here, so we can close up our modifier just so we can see things better. Now we need another modifier. This time we need a Deform modifier, and we're going to be looking in our Deform menu for Curve. And that doesn't do anything. It's okay, that's because we haven't told it to do anything yet. We're going to come down in our Curve modifier to Object, and we're going to open that up, and we're going to see our Capstone curve. It's going to list every curve we have in our scene, which is why we really want to be sure we name those. We only have the one right now, so let's select that. Alright, we're doing okay here. Now, we've got all that done, and we're ready to have this follow our curve. So I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to select my curve. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and voila, we see that our stone is following our curve. But it's not quite where we want it. Now we could take our curve and just kind of center it. And along with it, it's centering our nice capstones that we created at World 0. And now you see why I wanted to keep it there. Now, if we come in, those are sitting a little lower than I would like. Darn you, Shift key. So I'm going to raise that up a bit. There we go. And then we can tab back out, and we can select our stones. We can open up our modifier and just start upping our count. I'm guessing I'm going to go with, let's try 21. Well, actually I'm going to get away with it. Alright, we didn't quite make it to the end here, but we've got a pretty good lip going on here. So I'm just going to slide this a little bit to get what I want. And now we have a really nice capstone on here. Now I want to talk about why we created this at World 0 when we made our stone. That's because if we look at our curve is up here, but its center is this little orange dot down here because we've been making everything off of World 0. We made our whole bridge. So when we pulled our curve, it still had this center down here. So that should be a clue as to why I wanted to build my capstone there. It's because my capstone doesn't need to be wherever the curve is. The center of my capstone needs to be wherever the center of the curve is. So that's why I adjusted it a little bit down here. And then once we applied all of our modifiers, it hopped up to follow the curve. Now, if your center on your curve, for whatever reason, was created elsewhere because of something else you were doing, the only thing you have to remember is once you make your block or whatever it is you're going to have follow the path, you just need to make sure that its center is aligned the way you want with your curve center, regardless of where it is. Keeping it at 0 just made life easier for us. That's all. Alright, we've covered that. Now I'm going to select all of these. And because we already had our one curve, and because we've modeled our geometry so that we have a lot of bits that are identical. Now, I could create a new curve here, and I could create a new stone. Maybe make the shape a little bit different or something like that. But we can get away with just duplicating this. So I'm going to hit Shift D. And then, because it's on the y-axis, I'm going to hit Y. And I'm just going to drag a duplicate over. Now, because of the relationship with the curve, you'll often find that you have to drag in the opposite direction of what you really think you should be dragging. As you can see, our move control's down here. That's not bad. Alright, we've had our lights and our camera hidden away. I'm going to hold down Shift and turn that layer back on. And select my lamp, and I'm going to get it up out of my geometry. Maybe somewhere up over here. And we'll do something like that. See what we have. And I'm going to hit F12 just to do a quick render and see how things look. Not too bad for no ambient occlusion or anything else. Got the nice kind of curve we want. So I'm pretty happy with that. Alrighty, now let's go in. We're still in object mode. And we've made sure we've deselected everything. So now it's time for me to create another mesh. We're going to do another cube. We're going to scale this one down again. This one we're going to keep a little more square. We'll hit Z to go to wireframe again. And I just kind of want to there we go. I just want a little extra lip on that. And we'll bring that back to pretty much 0. And then once again, I'll Z back into shaded mode. Once again, I'm going to put a little bit of a bevel on this. So we'll tab into Edit, Control B, pull out a little bit of a bevel. That's not bad. Now, at this point, if you guys are working at home and you're really looking for a portfolio piece, I'm trying to keep things moving for training, but we've seen where we've subdivided meshes before, and in the case of our capstones and the stones we're going to be putting here, I might subdivide those a few times and just by hand move some vertices around to make our make our stone look a little more chiseled and stony, just to not have such perfect edges. So when you're practicing, you may want to play around with that a little bit. But for the purpose of just training, I'm not going to invest the time in that. So we've got this. That's still a little bigger, I think, than I want. So I'm going to scale that down a little more. That's pretty good. All right. I'm going to select our bridge. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to go into edge mode. And I'm going to try and grab this. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does. All right, now, here's something else I want to show you because this line's not nearly as smooth. So we're going to go ahead and do the stuff that we did before. I'm going to go ahead and hit P. I'm going to separate this selection. And then I'm going to here we go, Bridge 01. I'm going to rename this as Large Curve. And I'm also going to Go ahead and hit my Alt-C. Curve mesh from text. And then I'm going to add a modifier, only this time I'm going to add a subdivision surface. And now immediately you see how it smoothed that curve out, which is going to help our stone placement. And our stone will be covering these edges, so that doesn't really matter. I'm going to up this to 2. Now see, that's really nice and smooth. We like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and apply that. And if we go back into edit mode, we can see that nice smooth curve. All right. I'm going to make sure my cube is selected. Now we need our modifiers again. So we're going to go ahead and do an array. And we're going to do our little offset. It's not what I wanted. There we go. 1.04. That's what we used on the other one. So I like that. Actually, these could probably have a little more. 0.06. Alright, let's see how that works. And then we're going to have it follow a curve. And we want our large curve this time. And we're going to go ahead and select our large curve. Tab into edit mode. And you can see we got that following just fine. So now let's go back. Open up our modifier. See how many of these we need. Now there is something really interesting going on here that I want everyone to note. Now first, you can see I'm sticking past that. That's going to be okay. We could cut this by 1 and meld it down. We could easily go to 18. And we could just move it along the curve. Either one's fine, whichever one you want to do. Actually, I kind of like the way that splits. But I want you to note how it's adjusting dynamically the geometry to fit what we did. Just nothing really to learn there. It's just really cool, and I wanted to show it to you. So, now we've got that, and it looks really awesome. And once again, because we modeled everything so perfectly, making sure we followed our axis line when we started, our opposite side is exactly the same. So now we can come in. I'm actually going to sink that a little more. I don't want it sticking out that much. But again, that's up to you. We are going to cap the bottoms a little bit with some geometry. That's why I'm doing that. All right, I've got that in there. I can Shift D that on the y-axis. And I'm going to wish that I had gone to wireframe mode. That's all right. We can still bring that way out there. And now we have it modeled on our other side. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so now I'm going to leave a challenge with you to go ahead and create your curves for your other two small ones. I will drop a hint. Since we copied over our curve for these so that they'd be virtually identical, not only should you be able to duplicate over to the other side, you should also then be able to duplicate both back to here. If that doesn't work out for you, you might want to go back and look at how you were modeling in the first place and make sure that you had everything just the way we did it, because that should work out just fine. Alrighty, I think, well, why don't we go ahead and do these bottom bits. Actually, we're coming up on 20 minutes, and I really didn't want to go by that. So, that is your challenge, and I will see you in the next video where we will finish out our detail.